Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I thought it would be fun to talk about and dissect why Mona from PLL was never an official fifth liar on the show. So I've done a couple of Pretty Little Liars rewatches, and I always get to a certain point in the show where it really feels like Mona was trying to be included as one of the fifth liars, but they kind of backtracked on it quite quickly, and I thought we could have a discussion about it. Because I have several points about Mona and why she should have been a fifth liar, but also why it might hinder her character. So from season 4 onwards, there was a point in the show before Alison officially kind of came back from the dead where it felt like they were setting up Mona becoming this fifth liar along with the rest of the girls. Season 4 itself kind of starts where the girls are waking up and they're like, oh, Mona's not here, kind of like what happened with Alison. There's this kind of reflection of Mona is having the same kind of thing that Alison had at the start of the show. As well as this, at Wilden's funeral, there is a scene which is kind of like a parallel to Alison's funeral where the girls are talking to Holbrook. And Holbrook is like, yeah, we're going to find out who did this, whatever. And then the camera zooms out, pans out around the girls, which is a direct parallel to season 1. And Mona is included within this group of girls. From that alone, it feels like during this season, they were trying to include her as one of these girls, as one of these liars, as one of like the fifth members of this group. Marlene King, who is the director, producer, whatever, also kind of confirmed that they were trying to involve Mona within this kind of group, and she said that it is cool to come into season 4 with 5 PLLs, meaning she wanted to involve Mona. So what happened? Like, where was my girl? Ultimately, it felt like kind of once Alison was back in the situation, Mona was never really trusted to become this Pretty Little Liar, and I think Alison coming back hindered Mona becoming part of this group because they had the 5 liars back together, didn't need Mona part of the group. And I think they might have been worried that Mona would have taken like center stage. She was a fan favorite, absolute fan favorite, and I feel like they might have been scared that Mona would have taken Alison's place, and they didn't want that to kind of be a thing because Alison was one of the main liars. So I feel like that could have happened because once Alison came back, ultimately Mona was back to being a side character and kind of who we'd always known her to be. And here and there, she'd have like some really good one-liners and she would help out the girls here and there. But then after that, it was like, okay, back to being one of the side girls. I always kind of considered Mona one of the liars, even though the show didn't. She helped out the girls so much, and she was so smart with everything, and it always felt like, obviously A was one step ahead always, but it always felt like she had some type of thing on A, and she was really clever with it. And I understand what she did to the girls. I understand. And the girls' feelings towards Mona, very valid. I'm not saying they can't feel that way, but it ultimately felt like Mona was doing so much to get them to forgive her. She was helping them so much with AIM, with other things, and she was really smart with everything. But it never felt like she had that reassurance of like, do they like me anymore? And I don't expect the girls to love Mona. That's not what I'm saying, and I'm not expecting that of the girls. But to have this character who's really clever, she's helping you out all the time, because the girls are just not, apart from Spencer, they have no clue what they're doing. To not even have like that little trust in Mona and to still speak down on her is really weird, I feel like. Obviously, I'm not in this situation, so I don't know. And the girl's feelings towards Mona are very valid, but it just feels like she was always pushed to the side. And The matter of fact is, Mona became A because Alison and the girls bullied her. That's why she became A. And you see Hannah a lot of the time is very forgiving towards Mona. She acknowledges that the girls and Alison put Mona through hell. So we see that it's kind of acknowledged, but then it's just straight away pushed to the side. And I do think this was mainly because Alison obviously came back and kind of took her place back as being one of the liars again. Ultimately, the way Mona's character was written in the later half of the show compared to the first half of the show was a huge contrast to Alison's character. And it really showed that although Mona was never part of this main group for whatever reasons, she was so key to the story. It felt like a lot of the time kind of all roads led to Mona type of thing, and everything that kind of went down had some relevance to Mona. Not everything, obviously, but like most of the things have some relevance to Mona. And ultimately Mona knew more than the girls because she was A and she was in this A team. So Mona had so much relevance once she had been revealed as A, and once they wanted to know what happened to Alison and the whole CC stuff. Mona had a lot to do with the story. Mona was revealed to have killed Bethany as well, so she was a big part of the show. And it was really weird because she was a main character but a side character type of thing, and I really think they were trying to break her through as this main character in the show, but ultimately Alison came back and Mona would have had to been in her shadow. I wrote down a couple of reasons why potentially they didn't make Mona this fifth character. So Alison coming back, big reason. Alison was obviously the main character of the show during the early seasons of the show. And I think when Alison came back, it was like, how do we fit Mona and Alison into this group? And I don't think you can, because I think Mona has a really big personality and she's actually quite a leader and she's quite determined. To have Alison and Mona in the same group, first of all, after everything that happened, and with these contrasting personalities, I don't think it would have worked with both of them being in the same group. Mona was maybe so dominant in the show, so if Mona was brought into the group, it would have been too much and Mona would have turned into a shell of herself, which, oh my god, we could not let happen, guys, okay? To the point where her character would have been ruined. And this is a really good point I thought of, where when Alison comes back, she has this redemption arc, and ultimately by the end of the show, she's not Alison anymore, and she's just this shell of a character that she used to be. I feel like maybe if Mona was included in this group as the fifth liar, perhaps they would have went down the same route with Mona, which we could not let happen. I love Mona being a girl boss. I love her being a villain. I think it's so cool and adds so much more character to the show. They would have had to push Mona more to the back when Alison came back if Mona was a part of this group, because Alison would have had to take the front runner because she is the leader of the group. So I think Mona would have had turned into the shell, and at this time in the show she was a fan favorite, and I think to push the character away would have caused like a real uproar because she was one of the best characters in the show. My other reason is the whole Emerson stuff. Whether you like the relationship or not, I think the show tried to make Alison this front runner again, to make this relationship kind of an official thing and kind of to progress the relationship further. Because obviously during the time that Alison went missing, there was a whole thing about Alison's sexuality and Emily's sexuality. So I think when Alison came back, the writers wanted to take this, okay, let's capitalize on their feelings for each other and let's progress this even further. And I think if Mona was included in this group, a lot of the main story would have maybe just still resolved around Mona and Sorry. Mona and the girls, trying to see if they like each other, if they trust each other again, type of thing. So I think that was maybe like another reason why the writers were hesitant to add Mona into this, because they wanted this storyline. They wanted it to be a main storyline. Obviously, she did traumatize the girls, and the feelings towards Mona from the girls are valid. And I think unless you've experienced something like this, I think it's easy to say, like I did earlier, like, oh, like forgive her, it's fine. But ultimately she did kind of destroy their lives a lot. So the girls' feelings towards Mona is very valid, and I think the writers might have been worried that the audience wouldn't believe that they would just forgive Mona like that. So the feelings towards her are valid. Still though, like, my girl should have been involved. Also, to keep her as a fan favorite, Mona didn't appear in every episode, and when she did, it was just kind of like coming in, she would drop a really cool one-liner, she would help them with something, and then she would go. And although that's kind of using Mona to an extent, it was a thing of keeping like the audience entertained with it. When you have too much of something, it can get boring and it can get repetitive and you might not like it anymore. So I think maybe the writers kind of choosing to just remain her as this side character who comes here and there was actually a thing to protect the audience from becoming bored of this character. Sometimes it's like with Alison, it was exciting, Alison coming back, but then after like a season of Alison as like a main character, we were bored. We were like, okay, now what, type of thing. So maybe the writers did it to protect Mona's character, to protect the audience from becoming bored of this character. And that ultimately does make sense, because sometimes when you have a lot of something, it's like, okay, I don't want it anymore, and then it becomes boring. And the last thing we want for Mona is for her to be boring, because she is the star of the show. Also, it does bring up the validity, I don't know how to say it, of like, you don't have to forgive everyone type of thing. I think there's a lot of pressure on women these days, the women that I know and things that I've experienced, where it's a lot of pressure to forgive someone for something. And it's okay not to forgive people. You don't have to forgive people for things they've done to you just because you might not seem like a good person. You don't have to forgive someone. That's not a law. You don't have to forgive and forget and move on and be friends with them again. So I think having that message is also quite a good thing to have in the show. And also, my last point, Mona is like too smart. I think she would have had a lot of things solved before the girls, so they obviously couldn't drag out the show as much as like they could, because Mona's too smart, and Mona's always ahead of the girls, and sometimes ahead of not all the time, but Mona is way too smart for that group of girls. The only smart one in there obviously is Spencer, but sometimes even Spencer can be a bit oblivious. So I think things would have been solved and cracked so much faster. So then obviously the show would have like ended storylines so much more quicker, because Mona's too smart for her own good. I love Mona. I love Mona's character. It's a shame that she was never actually a fifth liar. Although, like, we don't know if we would have liked Mona as a fifth liar. They might have done it and we might have hated it. So, like I said, it might have actually just protected us from it. I would love to hear your opinion down below. Either your opinion on Mona in general as a fifth liar, or anything, or an opinion on anything I said. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys. Pick your season or argue.